We welcome back our Channel 404 viewers. A recap of our top story. President Jacob Zuma has paid tribute to South African music legend Hugh Masekela. He's described the internationally renowned musician as a pioneer of jazz music in South Africa. The world is mourning the death of Masekela today after a long battle with prostate cancer. For more, I'm joined in studio now by jazz writer Percy Mabandu. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. Just tell us, what's your initial reaction to Bra Hughs' passing?
A kind of disbelief, a kind of denial, but also a kind of, I mean, you look back and say, well, that was a life well lived. I mean, Bra Hugh lived his life largely, you know, and he was one of the most prolific musicians anywhere in the universe, you know. I mean, he's been productive since the 50s, and even, I mean, last year around August when we and Standard Bank did the collaboration with him and Rick, this was a man who was already planning to be productive, you know. So Bra Hugh never wasted time with other stuff. He was always looking for the next cool creative thing to get involved in, and I think that is in a way his greatest gift, you know, the artist who's ever giving, you know, the perennial outpouring of creative energy from Bra Hugh was that. So there's a bit of denial and there's a bit of disbelief to try and comprehend what kind of grammar do you phrase, do you frame the passing of such, you know, a large human being, you know.
I think one of the great things about artists is that even long after they've passed, their work still lives on. What do you see as Bra Hughs' legacy?
Bra Hughs' legacy is his refusal to be boxed in by time, by space. You know, we were talking with friends earlier about how even during his days in exile, when he was not supposed to have been in South Africa, his creative spirit was still amongst us. Anybody who grew up in the 80s and the 70s, at least here, knew of Bra Hugh, even though Bra Hugh was not allowed to be in South Africa. He was elsewhere, but his creative force was working its magic in our lives. You know, if you were in the township in South Africa in the 80s or the 90s, you know, before he came back, or even the 70s, you knew somebody with a record. You know, you knew somebody, you knew Bra Hugh's music, you know, and I think for me that is one of his gifts to us. I think we will always have something to look forward to or to look into, even though he's absent. And the economy of meaning that he created, you know, not only in jazz but in hip-hop and working with other more popular genres, and his thinking around culture and his role in shaping our politics and where we can go as a nation. But he was always intellectually involved creatively.
Well, I was going to say that he was more than just a musician, wasn't he? He was like a social anthropologist, if you like.
Yeah, no, like he was a full human being, you know, if ever there is such a thing. He was a full human being. If you sat down with Bra Hugh, you'll have a much, you know, you'll have an enriching conversation about food, all right? And then he'll move from there to the value of fashion in our lives, and he'll tell you jazz's contribution to how jazz musicians in the 50s shaped how people thought they should dress. And he saw himself as a big part of that kind of thinking about living a qualitative life in spite or despite, you know, your financial limitations, your political limitations, your racial limitations. He understood that the greatest power we have is our creative capacities, you know.
Indeed, indeed. Now, you have said that he was such a great individual, and he was very individual. So the question is, given the fact that you can't really box him in a certain genre, do you think this is the end of an era?
Look, it is an end of an era, you know, an era of interacting with Bra Hugh that you could walk up to in a shopping mall, you know, in that sense. But you know, if I'm Bra Hugh last week, I'm thinking about how do when am I in studio next week to make that new song? When am I talking to young people about this? So I think he understood the continuity of the life force and the creative force in that way. So you can say in terms of time marking, you know, history, it is a kind of era. He was born at a certain time, he lived, and then he died. But something that the works that he left behind will continue working their magic. So there is a continuity of his life force in that sense, in our collective imagination. But yeah, it's a kind of somber day, you know, that our skies been little less brighter. because he's not here with us in that way.
Wow, wow, wow. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for that contribution. That was Percy Mabandu. He's a jazz writer, just giving his view and thoughts on the late Bra Hugh Masekela.